I had only 10 minutes to decide, leave it to die or bring it inside and break the law. The cub was lying at the bottom of the ridge, half covered in dirt and dried leaves. I saw it while checking the north fence line, right where the rocks dropped 30 feet into a shallow ravine. I thought it was just a dead goat or maybe a coyote, but when I came closer, I froze. White fur, dust-covered and matted with blood, stretched over a frame too small to belong to anything but a young snow leopard. Its left front leg twisted unnaturally under its body. One eye was nearly shut, the other barely open. But it was breathing. Shallow but steady. There are no zoos or rehab centers around here. And touching a federally protected species without a permit can get you years in court. But what was I supposed to do? Walk away and let it die in the dirt? My hand hovered over its back. The fur was cold. I looked up. The sky was fading to gray, and the wind had shifted east. Rain was coming. If I left it here, it wouldn't survive the night. My truck was parked at the edge of the trail. I ran back for an old wool blanket and my heavy-duty gloves. By the time I returned, it hadn't moved. I crouched beside it and spoke softly. "You're not going to hurt me, right? We're just going to figure this out." It didn't respond. I lifted it slowly. It didn't fight. Its head rolled to the side, limp as a rag. I wrapped it up tight and pressed it against my chest. I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew I couldn't leave it. Back at the house, I laid it on a pile of towels near the wood stove. The fire was low, but the room was warm. I kept the lights off. The less stimulation, the better. I filled a syringe with water and tried to wet its lips. "Come on," I whispered. "You're tougher than this." It didn't flinch. I checked its belly. Shallow rise, fall, rise, fall. I poured warm water into a bowl and dipped a cloth. Carefully, I cleaned the blood and dirt off its fur. The gash on its side wasn't deep, but the leg, that was bad. I had no splints, no sedatives, no training. But I had duct tape, wooden paint stirrers, and YouTube. I kept the volume low, followed step by step. I didn't know if it would help. I just needed something to do. All night, I sat beside it. I didn't sleep. Every 10 minutes, I checked its breathing. Sometimes it skipped a beat, and I thought it was gone. Then it would gasp, and my heart would nearly stop. I remembered a night 5 years ago when my wife collapsed in the kitchen. Stroke. I rode in the ambulance with her. I held her hand until the machine said stop. This night felt the same. Helpless. Cold. At 5 in the morning, I stood up and stretched. The sky was just beginning to lighten. I boiled coffee, trying not to make noise. I kept glancing at the lump of white fur, half expecting it to vanish, like a dream I'd conjured out of grief. The fire popped. A crow screamed outside. I walked back over, knelt beside it, and placed 2 fingers near its nose. No air. Its chest wasn't moving. I sat down hard, all the strength gone from my knees. I closed my eyes. Maybe I should have left it. Maybe I just made its last hours worse. I pressed a towel over its body, hands shaking. Then I heard it. A gasp, barely audible. I pulled the towel away. Its eye opened just slightly. It blinked, slow and confused. Then a shallow, wheezing exhale. It was alive. Barely, but alive. I sat frozen, afraid to even breathe too loud. After a few seconds, it tried to move its head but winced. I touched its side gently. "It's okay. Don't move. Just stay here. You're gonna be all right." It blinked again, this time slower. A flicker of recognition? Or just pain? I didn't know. But in that moment, I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't over yet. The next 3 days blurred together. I barely left the living room. The fire never went out. The blankets around the cub stayed warm, and every few hours, I offered water with a syringe. Most of it dribbled down his chin, but sometimes I thought he swallowed. His breathing stayed shallow, but steady. The leg was the worst. It was swollen, angry-looking. I cleaned it twice a day, changed the makeshift splint. I didn't know what kind of infection he might have, so I crushed up a couple of old amoxicillin tablets from the back of my bathroom cabinet and mixed the powder into a little water. Probably not textbook veterinary care, but it was all I had. He didn't have a name yet. I didn't want to name something that might die. But by the 4th morning, something changed. I was half asleep on the couch when I heard a rustle. I opened my eyes and saw him shifting, his head slightly raised, mouth twitching like he was dreaming. Then, for the first time, he let out a sound. A weak, raspy chuff. Not a growl, not a cry, just breath with feeling in it. I walked over and knelt beside him. His eyes opened, not all the way, but enough. He looked at me, or maybe just in my direction. It hit me then. He was fighting. Ash, I whispered. The word came out of nowhere. The color of his fur reminded me of cooled wood ash, gray, soft, faintly blue. And maybe part of me just needed something to call him that didn't sound like goodbye. You're Ash now, I said. Guess you're sticking around. From that moment, something shifted in me too. I became methodical. Every few hours, I gave him fluids. I set alarms to rotate him gently so he wouldn't get sores. I cleaned his wounds with boiled water and made a little paste out of honey and turmeric, an old trick my grandmother used on cuts. Ash didn't resist. He was too weak. But he watched me. Quietly. Always quietly. On the 5th day, I stepped outside to chop some wood. I needed to move, to breathe air that didn't smell like smoke and fur. That's when I saw Bill's truck rumbling up the road. He wasn't the kind of man who knocked. He just came right in like he had for the past 20 years. Eddie, you alive in here? Smells like something died. Before I could stop him, he stepped into the living room and froze. Ash was lying in the corner, his head up now, blinking slowly. What the hell is that? I stood between him and the cub. Found him by the ravine. He fell. Legs broken. Bill's mouth opened and closed like he couldn't decide which word to throw first. You brought a snow leopard into your damn house. Are you insane? He was dying. Yeah, well now you might be dying too. From fines. Or rabies. Jesus, Eddie, do you know what kind of trouble this is? You can't just keep a wild animal like a stray dog. I'm not keeping him. I'm helping him. Then I let him go. Bill shook his head. That's not how this works. You have to report this. Call Fish and Wildlife. Let the experts handle it. Experts? Out here? You know damn well they won't drive this far for one half-dead cub. And if they do, they'll put him down. He looked at me, quiet for a moment. You don't know that. I do. You think this is what she would have wanted? He asked suddenly. I stiffened. Don't bring her into this. She kept you balanced. Since she's been gone, you haven't been the same. This isn't balance, Ed. This is desperation. He glanced at Ash, who was watching us both with calm, heavy eyes. He's got no business in your house. Then leave mine, I said, voice low. Bill exhaled through his nose. He walked past me, paused at the door. I hope this doesn't kill you. Or him. The door closed hard behind him. I stood there for a long time. That night, Ash took 3 sips of goat milk from a bottle. I stayed up watching him breathe. He was still a mess, but the light was back in his eyes. Faint, but steady. For the first time since she died, I felt like I had something to protect again. 3 weeks passed. Ash was no longer the limp ball of fur I carried through the rain. He still limped, his front legs stiff and crooked, but he could stand now. Walk. Even hobble from one side of the barn to the other. I moved him there on the 2nd week, once he was strong enough. I couldn't keep him in the house anymore. Not with the scent he left behind, and certainly not with people starting to ask questions. The barn became his space. I built a pen out of old fencing, lined it with hay, and left a heating lamp above his favorite corner. I visited him every morning and evening. Brought meat scraps, bottles of milk, water. Sometimes he growled when I came too close. But mostly, he watched me with those quiet, knowing eyes. He was getting bigger, faster too. A few times, I caught him testing the limits of the pen, leaping awkwardly, pawing at the top. I knew it wouldn't hold him much longer. I also knew I was running out of time. The sheriff came by one afternoon, acting casual, but not really. Hey Ed, just doing a routine check. You seen anything strange out here? Folks are talking about a big cat spotted by the trails. One of those wildlife collars stopped transmitting last week. Female snow leopard, out from the research preserve. My throat went dry. I forced a shrug. Haven't seen anything. Just the usual coyotes messing with my chickens. Well, if you do see anything unusual, best you call it in. You know the drill. It's protocol now. Sure. He smiled, thinly, then added, lot of eyes on this one. Government tagged her for breeding. They want her found. And if she had cubs out here, well, that complicates things. He left after a cup of coffee, but the second he drove off, I went straight to the barn. Ash was sleeping, chest rising and falling. Still safe. Still mine. That night, I pulled the trail cameras from my property. Every single one. I shut off the power to the front gate. From now on, I wouldn't risk anyone stumbling into that barn. 2 nights later, I heard tires crunching on gravel at 1 in the morning. I didn't turn on the lights. I just stood at the window and watched a black SUV crawl to a stop at the bottom of my drive. The engine idled, Then someone stepped out, flashlight sweeping side to side. The beam hit the barn door. I grabbed my coat, slipped outside barefoot. The night was freezing. "Who's there?" I called. The light turned toward me, then dipped. A man in a ranger jacket approached slowly. He didn't speak for a second. "Sorry to bother you this late," he said. "Just got word from up north. Someone saw paw prints near the edge of your property." "Paw prints?" "Big ones. Snow leopard size." I said nothing. He nodded toward the barn. "Mind if I take a look inside? It's just old feed and junk. Nothing dangerous." He hesitated, then smiled. "Still, protocol." I opened the door, heart pounding. Ash was quiet in the far corner, behind the false wall I'd built from plywood and bales of straw. I had camouflaged it well, but not well enough. The ranger stepped inside, scanned the space, took a few slow steps. I stood behind him, barely breathing. He walked the length of the barn, stopped near the fake wall. He tilted his head, almost like he heard something, then turned to face me. "Looks like you keep things neat." "Try to. Mind if I use your bathroom before I head back?" "Sure." I let him inside. As he passed me, I noticed something strange. He wasn't wearing gloves. No radio. No partner. He finished quickly, thanked me, and stepped outside. "If you do see anything," he said again, pausing on the porch, "best to let us know. Might be safer. For everyone." He looked at me, a little too long, then walked to his SUV and drove off. I waited until his taillights vanished. Then I ran to the barn. Ash was gone. My heart dropped. But then I saw movement behind the hay. He'd wedged himself into a space between two walls. Perfectly still. Hidden. He looked at me, blinked slowly. I exhaled for the first time in minutes. "Smart boy," I whispered. The next day, I built a stronger enclosure. Dug into the floor, added metal grates. But something had changed. That ranger hadn't been here to search. He'd been here to warn me. And I had no idea why. By late spring, Ash wasn't a cub anymore. His body had filled out, lean but powerful, and his limp was barely noticeable unless you watched closely. I stopped locking him in the barn. There wasn't much point. He could scale the fence in seconds now, if he wanted. But he never strayed far. He'd disappear into the woods at dusk, and by sunrise, he was back. Usually lounging on the roof of my shed or curled beneath the old oak near the stream. We didn't speak, obviously, but there was an understanding between us. Not ownership, not companionship in the traditional sense, just presence. He knew I wouldn't harm him, and I knew he wouldn't harm me. But the world around us didn't share that balance. One morning, I found feathers scattered near the chicken coop. One of the hens was gone. Then another, 2 nights later. I checked the fencing, reinforced it, hung up motion lights. But more birds vanished. I blamed raccoons, maybe a fox. Then Marla from down the road stopped by. "You seen anything weird lately?" she asked, hands on her hips. "Weird how?" "Like tracks. Big ones. Bill says he saw something white in his pasture last week. Said it moved like a ghost. Scared his dog half to death." I laughed, too hard. "Probably just fog. Or that stray husky someone dumped last winter." She didn't look convinced. "If it was a husky, it's one hell of a big one." Rumors started to spread. People began locking up their livestock. I heard talk at the feed store. Someone claimed their goats were mauled. Another swore they heard a roar in the night. Then the sheriff put out a warning. Unconfirmed sightings of a large predator. Use caution. Secure animals. Report anything suspicious. Ash had never touched my chickens. I was sure of it. He had plenty of space to hunt, and I fed him regularly. Still, it didn't matter. To them, he was the white beast. A threat. One evening, just before dark, I found Ash sitting on the porch. He hadn't come that close in weeks. I stepped outside, sat on the steps beside him. He didn't move. "You feel it too, don't you?" I said. The shift. The eyes. He turned his head slowly, stared into the trees. Then back at me. I ran a hand through my beard, heart heavy. "They won't stop looking. Not now. Not after this." The next morning, I drove to the ranger station. Asked for the man who'd visited before. They said he wasn't assigned there anymore. Transferred out. No details. That night, I heard a knock at the door. 3 men stood outside. 2 carried rifles. The third I didn't recognize. "Evening," he said. "Mind if we ask you a few things?" "Depends what about." "We're tracking something. Big. You might have seen it." "I've seen coyotes. A bobcat once." "We're not talking about bobcats." One of the men stepped forward. "We followed prints down past the ridge. Led straight here." I opened the door wider, let them see the inside. Nothing in here but me. They looked past me, into the shadows. You got a barn, right? Sure. Locked up. Old feet. You won't find anything worth shooting. The lead guy nodded. Then let's take a look. I stepped outside, heart hammering. The wind had picked up. Leaves scattered around our feet. Ash wasn't in the barn. At least, he shouldn't have been. I led them down the gravel path, flashlight beam cutting through the dark. My fingers tightened around the keys in my pocket. When we reached the barn, I hesitated. Look, I said, turning to face them. If you go in there and something's hiding, and you shoot it before asking what it is, I swear to God. We're just checking, one interrupted. Relax. I opened the door slowly. The flashlight swept across empty hay. Feed bins. Rakes. Silence. No Ash. But behind me, one of them said, "What the hell was that?" A rustle came from behind the barn. Then a low, vibrating sound. Not a roar. A warning. We turned. My chest tightened. Ash stood at the edge of the tree line. His silhouette tall, motionless, eyes reflecting the beam of light like silver coins. The man raised his rifle. I stepped in front of him. Don't. He didn't lower it. Move. Now. No. He hasn't hurt anyone. He won't. You shoot him, and I swear. Ash took a step forward. The gun cocked. I raised my voice. Ash, go. Now. He blinked, then turned. Silent. Vanished into the dark. One of the men cursed. Another lowered his gun. You trained it? What the hell was that? I didn't train him, I said. He just listened. Because I asked. They didn't understand. I didn't expect them to. They left after searching the barn again. Told me to keep watch. Call if I saw him. I stood outside long after they drove away. The air was cold. Empty. For the first time, I wondered if Ash would come back at all. The next morning, I made the call. It took hours of digging through old numbers, leaving voicemails, following callbacks. I didn't even know the name of the ranger who'd visited that night weeks ago. But eventually, someone connected me to a woman named Dana, head of a rehab center about 4 hours south. She didn't ask many questions. If the animal's still alive and can walk, we can arrange transport, she said. We have a secure valley near the Idaho line. No people, no roads. Just open land. He won't go easy, I warned. Most don't. We arranged to meet in 3 days. I didn't tell her how long I'd had Ash. I didn't tell her about the barn or the night with the rifles. I just gave her my address, and she promised to bring a quiet transport crate and 2 handlers. But Ash didn't come back. That night, I left food near the woods. By dawn, it was untouched. The next day, I hiked the trail he used to favor. No sign. No prints. The forest felt hollow. By the 3rd day, I started calling out. Quietly at first, then louder. Nothing. That evening, a storm rolled in. Cold rain, wind sharp as glass. I stood on the porch until I couldn't take it anymore. Grabbed my coat, my flashlight, started walking. The trail was slick, the mud pulling at my boots. Branches whipped my face. I climbed up past the ridge, to the rock shelf where I'd first found him. And that's where I saw it. A patch of white fur snagged on a thorn bush. A smear of blood on a stone nearby. My heart nearly stopped. I dropped to my knees, fingers trembling. The trail continued upward. I followed it. Every step felt heavier than the last. My breath caught in my throat. I whispered his name again and again, not sure if I was praying or pleading. It took nearly an hour to reach the bluff. There, on the edge of the cliff, he stood. Ash. Alive. Blood streaked his shoulder, and his chest rose with slow, heavy breaths. His fur was soaked, plastered to his ribs. But his eyes, those silver eyes, they were calm. He saw me, held my gaze. I didn't move. I didn't call him. I just stood there, rain washing down my face, mixing with everything I didn't know how to say. For a moment, the wind paused. Ash took one step back, then another. He turned away. I watched him vanish into the fog, graceful, steady, and utterly free. I stayed on that bluff until the sky cleared. My legs shook from the cold. My hands were raw, but I couldn't leave until I accepted it. He was never mine. I didn't save him. I just didn't get in his way. When I got back to the house, the handlers were waiting. The crate was empty. I waved them off, told them thanks, but it wasn't needed anymore. Dana didn't ask why. The next morning, I walked down to the stream. The sun was out. Birds chattered in the trees. And there, in the mud near the water's edge, was a single paw print. Large, deep, headed west. I smiled. Good boy, I whispered, then turned and let him go for real.